Hey, I'm Justin.
This is Chaz.
Join us as we look back together, but learn to stay present.
Come with us as we rise up with hope on the horizon.
This is the podcast of extraordinary millennial gentlemen.
For us, similar in aspects, different stages and things. A few things I'll throw out there, kind of as contrast in my story is, so my medical history is kind of that. Like my wife's is clean as a whistle, so we're kind of flip flop there, and mine is. I didn't make it a few months out into this earth before I had stuff hit, and so when I was 2 months old, I got 2 forms of meningitis. Like I should not be alive. Yeah. More to tell to that story another time. But
that's right.
The basics of that is I was kind of told my whole life, like, you may not have kids. And back then they didn't know, right? It was just like, you had some serious medical stuff. You almost died. Chances are you probably, so I heard that my whole life, like, okay, you might not have kids, and I brought it up prior to marriage, full disclosure, throwing it out important. There. That's not a little baggage I didn't, share. So I had that kind of going into it. And so I was kind of like, well, I guess, the weird part again, and the confusion for us and the lack of answers that you were leading to is like, I thought I would have been the problem, right? And it was like, well, the first one works so, fine, right? He came, no problem. And so now we're like, well, maybe that, like, again, back to, he such the miracle, like, not have any more. So that started coming up. And I know, maybe other guys in this type of situation, and I guess, I don't know if these are 100%, but the statistics we were told is kind of 50-50, whether it's the guy or the girl. Yeah, that's not a lot of people don't know that, and we've got some mutual friends where it's been the guy's side.
We could rattle them off to make that 50-50 between our circle of friends and acquaintances that we know have struggled with this. I think it is 50-50. We're not going to make a list, but
right,
I would agree with that.
It makes
sense in our small circle,
so having kind of been in that situation where I was like, it's going to be me. And then on the flip side, when you have those conversations and your wife's like, oh, I guess it's me. Like, that is a big burden to kind of work through, like thinking like, oh, I'm the reason. Right. And so there's a huge drive, like you're mentioning, to seek out these answers. And so we started, we went and did some procedures and stuff as well to give this a try. And, there's multiple options. We tried them both,
right?
And all failures, like you're talking about, just swing and a miss every time, striking out, and through the more invasive procedures and stuff, like complete failure across the board, no viable even options to use for us for some of those things, and so completely no answers came. And excuse me. We kind of knew that going into it because this particular doctor, and again, we've been blessed by the change of job and some of those things to kind of help with us, because that's a big barrier it is. As well. And so,
could you imagine being self-employed?
Oh yeah. Oh,
on your own insurance, trying to do this. On like a self-insured.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and we had some friends, not going to say who, but they were in the point where they were like signing up for the state care options because their current didn't offer it, but for them to pay outright, it made more sense for them to pay that higher monthly.
It's some kind of coverage.
Exactly. It was like, it was better to do that. So they, worked with what options they had.
So can I throw that out there? You've identified a couple really important aspects to this that I can relate to, and I won't rehash all of our experience per se, but for everybody listening out there, I think Chaz made a couple really good points. They were all great points.
Great.
But a couple things that jump out to me, if you're listening and you're not necessarily dealing with this, haven't, or you think you might, that conversation of trying to relate to one another as spouse spouse to spouse about something biological that may be preventing you from this amazing experience of joy, rite of passage, and desire that you both share.
Yep.
It's extremely, extremely unique to have that conversation and to talk through that. It'll humble you down to the mud, you know.
Yep.
And the second thing I wanted to point out was what we were just kind of relating to in that experience you shared with that couple, you know, and that is the financial burden of doing this takes actual planning. It takes analysis. You're shopping around the potential to further your genetic pool. And I think there's some taboos around that.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's this idea that's like, well, let me give you a juxtaposition. Okay.
Yeah.
I saw this a lot in our first few years of marriage. Good friends, people that we love, people that we know well, they get pregnant. They're going through a healthy pregnancy and they are just sweating bullets about the financial burden. It's the unknown. Maybe it's the first child. Maybe it's not the first child.
Yep.
Financial stress, financial strain. Okay. I'm not saying one is better than the other or one is worse.
Yeah.
But a juxtaposition of that is not able to start your family, and the barriers you might have to doing that absolutely relate to your finances and your ability to come up with large lump sums of money, large amounts of capital. Sorry, got economics running through my head.
Yes.
Marks. Nope.
Assets.
Yeah. Just cash flow. You got to have a lot of cash and liquidity, right? To be able to do this, because you'll find that some of these processes are maybe not terribly expensive, the cost of certain tests and diagnostics.
Yeah.
But then it's going to come to a put up or shut up point.
Yep.
Procedures, surgeries, outpatient things that may require anesthesia. Not a small sum of money.
Right. I mean,
by
I think
any means.
you could easily get to the same price going through this process as the initial adoption. But, you know, sometimes you have to go through these before you consider that for some people. And so by the time you get there, it's like, okay, we've spent all this, like you give up some, and I don't want this to sound shallow, but just normal pieces of life, like trips or things for the house or whatever. You make these trade-offs because you're making them for the family, and you're like, well, we want this to happen. This is our goal. We prefer this over those, right? So they're good trade-offs, but you're still making them. And, you know, so it kind of sets you back on those other plans and things of life. And it is a barrier, and then you go through it, and then you may still have more to go through based on the rounds, jobs, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, just as an example, it's like, have you ever had to be like, okay, I need to throw down over $1,000 for this one shot, for these meds? And I don't know if the insurance is going to cover it, but we need it based on the timing, like in 2 days. So I need to overnight this, throw it on a card maybe, or drain a little bit of your savings and just cross your fingers and hope everything works out. So it is like you said, some lump sums here and there that, you know, you kind of do.
Yeah. I want to walk through a little bit of our journey a little bit further, man. I'm being long-winded. I think I got to probably 3 years in, maybe about 4 years in. So we've been at, this particular clinic, getting different diagnostics, trying a couple different procedures. My wife had a little outpatient surgery. That got us to about 12 months in. And our doctors said, okay, you did this very common procedure, IUI. We did 2 of those. And our doctor kind of said, here's the deal. Statistically, the fact that you had zero success in these 2 IUIs, your third is kind of exponentially not in your favor. So we can do that. And compared to some other procedures, more cost effective.
Yeah.
Or our doctor said, or we can just shoot the moon. He didn't say that. He was very educated. This is my idiot version translated. We can go for an IVF, in vitro fertilization. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of sat through what that would look like. And then we had to go to the business manager and talk through numbers. And I'm just going, my brain's like, we've already spent a lot of money to maybe just be faced with one option that's an extremely expensive option. And excuse me. So on that ride home, I think we talked about everything but that. Mm-hmm. We got home. My wife had been a little quiet. And I'm thinking, okay, we gave this a solid shot for a year. I think 12 months, we keep trying, but we've got to hoard some money, and because we've got other things planned. We've got goals. We've got things going on. She's working full time. I'm working full time. Right. So we're in a very stable spot. And this is voluntarily throwing a ton of instability into it, as well as the financial risk, because we don't have that money today. Yeah. Which is where I start to feel that risk. Like I said, can I pony this up right now?
Yeah.
Do I have a recovery plan financially?
And you don't really want to go to your local bank and be like, I need a loan
for a baby.
I'm loaning out my first child. Like that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Finance. That's right. Fleeced him. I fleeced this baby. So we can laugh about this, people. It's okay. Yeah. It's all right. So, okay. What did my wife say? She looked at me, just absolute humility and clarity, was like, we need to do this. And that was one of those, like, I've got 10 reasons why we shouldn't. But she's right. And I don't know why. But I'm going to keep going through the argument of the 10 in my head and just keep it to itself.
Yeah.
Then I won't get in trouble.
You don't let those out at that moment.
Okay. Sure. Yep. Okay. So we started down that path. Chaz mentioned something, at least in the IVF procedure, that's really important. If you've experienced this, I'm curious to know what your experience was, but you get with some of these procedures where they cannot genuinely estimate the financial impact of the burden, the cost, bills that come, because it's incredible that procedures and the things that science can mimic. But you get to a point where the clinic is working with you or your spouse, or both, to prepare you for kind of what pregnancy, nature taking its course, and just getting everything ready. And the only way that can be done is through hormones, through synthetic means. Yep. And while they're typically unsafe, not trying to go conspiracy theory, they're incredibly expensive. Incredibly expensive. We lived in Denver, Colorado at the time, and there were 2 pharmacies in Colorado. One was in Denver, the other was not in Denver. That, for the most part, we had to go in person and pick up. And they were not covered by insurance, and very expensive. And it was like, once you start down this road of trying to replicate these natural processes, if you don't stick with this, then there's not much that those doctors can do. Science really can't help you out if you can't execute the plan.
Right.
That ended up being far more expensive than we thought. So we came out of this with a successful retrieval. We had embryos that were developed. We were incredibly humbled. It was amazing to get to that stage. We had embryos implanted, and we had our twins, my 2 daughters, through that process. And I can tell you right now, it is just a string of totally unexpected. Did we beat the statistics? I would say we were right in line with the statistics.
Yeah.
And for those of you guys out there who haven't dove into this, but you're looking at it as a couple or as a family, age is really important. Age is really important. It's a tough thing because financially, most people are better off. I mean, statistically, they are better off the older they are and have a greater means to earn an income.
Yep.
And yet, the earlier you can do this and the younger you are, the statistics will favor success.
Right.
But I'm not a statistician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you that that's how the math always works. But we were very, very lucky to come out with the skin of our teeth still intact, to kind of cash flow this. And and we had our daughters.
Hey, thanks for spending some time with us today. Hope you find hope and joy throughout this upcoming week. If you've liked this podcast, please hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week.
I ate my grandma.